The day my HOA president stole my boat. She did it in a captain's hat she had absolutely no business wearing. Drunk on box wine, fake authority, and the kind of confidence that usually ends with handcuffs. You buy a house on a lake because you want peace, maybe a little quiet sunrise, maybe a clean breeze, and a place to breathe after work. Not because you want to wake up and find your pontoon gone like some middle-aged pirate with a board-approved ego sailed off with it. But that's exactly what happened to me. And I'll tell you right now, if you ever want to see karma show up fast, put an entitled HOA woman on stolen property in open water and let her start talking. I'd only been in that lakeside community a few months when all this happened. Nice place on paper, real pretty from a distance. The kind of neighborhood brochure people make when they want you to think everybody drinks lemonade, waves from golf carts, and respects each other's fences. In reality, it was a usual mix. A few decent folks, a few nosy ones, and one woman who treated the HOA like she'd been crowned queen of the shoreline by God himself. Her name was Karen, because of course it was. I met her my second day there. I was still unpacking boxes, sweating through a t-shirt, trying to figure out which key went which side door, when she rolled up in one of those golf carts people in HOA neighborhoods treat like official government vehicles. She had on a visor, giant sunglasses, and that smile people wear when they're already halfway into telling you what you're doing wrong. She didn't introduce herself like a normal person. She announced herself, said she was president of the HOA, then handed me a printed list of violations before I'd even got my dishes in the cabinets. My trash cans had been visible from the road too long. My porch light was too warm-toned. My mulch, according to her, looked untidy. That was my welcome basket. I remember standing there holding that paper, thinking, all right, I know exactly what kind of neighborhood this is. Still, I kept my head down. I'm not one of those people who needs to swing his rank around or make a speech every time somebody acts stupid. I work for the Coast Guard, but I don't advertise it. I like home and work separate. On the job, fine, I'll deal with chaos, procedure, bad judgment, all of it. At home, I want coffee, quiet water, and as little nonsense as possible. That was the dream. Anyway, a few weeks after moving in, I bought myself a new pontoon boat. Nothing flashy, not some giant luxury thing, but it was beautiful to me. Clean lines, fresh upholstery, smooth motor, roomy enough for a good afternoon on a lake, and quiet enough to make you feel like your week had finally loosened its grip on your neck. That boat was my reward to myself. Long hours, hard years, a lot of missed weekends. I'd earned it. So that Friday evening, I got everything ready for its first real day out. I tuned the engine, checked the fuel, stocked the storage bins, laid out life jackets, checked flares, restocked the first aid kit, tied off every line clean and tight. The whole deal. I've spent too much of my life around water to get casual with safety. Water has no patience for lazy people. You learn that fast in my line of work. Saturday morning came bright and calm, one of those perfect lake mornings where the sun hits the water like scattered coins. I woke up early, made coffee, stood by the window, and looked out toward my dock with that little stupid grin you get when you know you've got a good day ahead of you. Then I blinked. Then I leaned closer to the glass. Then I said out loud to an empty kitchen, "What the hell?" My dock was empty. Not loose rope. Not a drifted boat. Not some half-off tie where maybe the wind had done something weird. Empty. The boat was gone, and the lines were gone too. Just bare dock posts and open water. You ever have one of those moments where your body knows before your brain does? That hard drop in your chest, like an elevator cable snapped somewhere inside you. That's what it felt like. For about 3 seconds, I ran through every dumb possibility. Maybe I moved it. Maybe somebody borrowed it. Maybe there was some emergency and... No chance. I lived alone. Nobody had permission. That boat had been tied and locked. It had been stolen. I was halfway to grabbing my phone and calling the police when I heard it. Laughter, loud and sharp, floating over the lake. Then music. Some awful party playlist thumping across the water like Bad Judgment with a bass line. I set down my mug, walked to the hall closet, grabbed my binoculars, and stepped out onto back deck. There it was, my boat, my brand new pontoon, my pride and joy, cruising across the lake with a whole crowd on it like it was a floating wine bar. People were dancing. Somebody had a glittery scarf blowing in the wind. There were plastic cups in the air, one woman nearly tipping over while trying to take a selfie, and at the helm, I swear to God, was Karen, wearing a white captain's hat 2 sizes too big for her head, steering my boat like she was leading a parade. For a second, I just stood there. You know that kind of anger that's so pure it actually goes cold first? Not yelling, not pacing, just that dead still feeling where your jaw tightens and the whole world gets very clear. That's where I was. My first thought was simple. Drive to the public ramp, meet them there, drag her off my boat myself. But then a better thought showed up, a much better one. I went back inside, picked up my phone, and made one call to the local sheriff's marine unit. Calm voice, clear facts. My boat had been stolen from my private dock. I had visual confirmation of the vessel underway on the lake. I gave them the registration number, description, location, direction of travel. Then I made another call. This one was to my own people. I explained I was off duty, but my privately owned vessel had been taken and was being operated by someone with zero authorization, and, from the look of it, zero seamanship. I also mentioned the visible drinking on board, and the fact that I knew for a certainty those passengers had never gotten a safety briefing. That got attention fast. Not because I'm special, because stolen boats, open containers, and clueless operators on crowded water are how people get hurt. After that, I did the most satisfying thing I could think of. I sat down on my back porch with my coffee, my binoculars, and the kind of patience that only comes when you know somebody has just made a huge mistake and doesn't realize the bill is already on its way. Karen kept circling, showing off to her friends. I could see her waving one arm around like she was narrating a sightseeing tour. Every now and then one of the women would throw her head back laughing. They looked so pleased with themselves, so certain nobody could touch them. That's one thing I've noticed about small-time tyrants. They always think the setting changes the rules. Put them on a dock, in a clubhouse, behind a folding table at a meeting, and suddenly they think law itself takes a step back and lets them improvise. About 20 minutes later, the show started. I saw one patrol boat coming in from the west, fast and clean, blue lights flashing off the water. Then from the other side came a response boat I knew real well, orange, white, all business. The second Karen noticed them, the mood on my pontoon changed so fast it almost made me laugh. Music cut. People turned. A few hands went up in confusion. One woman sat down so hard she nearly spilled herself overboard. The patrol boats closed in from both sides and boxed them gently, professionally, leaving no room for theatrics. Over the loudspeaker came that voice people always ignore until it's aimed at them. Cut the engine. Remain seated. Keep your hands visible. Real simple. Real clear. Karen naturally started waving her arms. Even from shore, I could tell she was talking too much. One of my co-workers stepped across during the boarding. I'll call him Dave. Good man. Sharp as a tack. Absolutely married procedure. Which, in that moment, made him perfect. He didn't care about Karen's title, her tone, her hat, or whatever nonsense she was trying to sell. He boarded, secured the scene, and started the routine. Registration, safety gear, operator authorization, passenger count, open containers. Standard stuff. The sort of stuff that feels harmless right up until you're the idiot being asked for answers you do not have. I watched Karen point at herself, then at the houses, then out at the lake, like maybe ownership was a feeling now, like maybe being HOA president turned private property into public inventory. That was when I decided I'd enjoyed the porch enough. I got in my truck and headed down to the marina dock where they were escorting my boat in. By the time I got there, The whole thing had that crackling energy a public embarrassment always gets. A few neighbors had wandered over. Deputies were on the dock. Karen's friends were climbing off one by one, suddenly very interested in their shoes, their phones, the weather, anything but Karen. My boat was tied up again. Thank God, a little messy, but intact. Karen was furious. Not ashamed. Not scared yet. Furious. Then she saw me. "There you are," she shouted, pointing like I was a problem. "Tell these officers who I am. Your boat was just sitting there. We were using it for a community tour. This lake belongs to all of us." I don't know if it was the words or the tone, but I almost smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind you get right before a trap snaps shut. I looked at her, then at Dave, who was standing there with his clipboard and the calm face of a man doing everything by the book. He was trying very hard not to enjoy himself. I walked up beside him and said, "Karen, this is my coworker." She stared. I patted the rail on the pontoon. "And this is my boat." You could see the whole thing hit her in pieces. First confusion, then recognition, then that pale, awful look people get when their brain finally catches up to the fact that their mouth has been operated with no adult supervision. You work with them," she said, and her voice had lost all that Queen of the Lake power. "Yep," I said, "and what you did wasn't borrowing. You cut a lock, entered my property, took a private vessel without permission, operated it without authorization, and served drinks while doing it. So now the sheriff gets the theft part, and the rest gets documented too." She started talking fast after that. Too fast. Said it was a misunderstanding. Said she thought homeowners shared lake assets. Said she was showing guests the neighborhood. Said I should have made the rules clearer. That one almost made me laugh out loud. Clearer, because apparently not yours had become a difficult concept. Then one of the deputies asked how she accessed the dock, and here came the twist I hadn't even known yet. One of her own friends, a woman who looked like she wanted to vanish into planks, admitted Karen had used bolt cutters from her garage to snap the lock on my gate. Just said it, right there, like guilt had finally outweighed loyalty. Another woman chimed in that she'd asked Karen twice if she had permission and had been told, "I run this community. I don't need permission." Well, that was that. You could actually feel the air go out of Karen's little empire. The deputy's tone changed. Not dramatic, just firmer. He asked her to put her hands where he could see them and explained, real plain, that she was being detained while they sorted out the theft and property damage. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked around for support, but all her friends had stepped back like she was contagious. And standing there, watching that happen, I had one of those strange calm moments that come after the anger burns itself out. Because the truth is, people like Karen count on something. They count on other people being too polite, too tired, too unsure, too worried about making a scene. They push because most folks just want the nonsense to stop. That's how little dictators grow in neighborhoods, offices, churches, anywhere. Not because they're strong, but because too many decent people decide it's easier to let one more thing slide. That morning, I decided I was done sliding. The fallout came fast. Karen ended up charged over the theft and the property damage, along with a stack of lesser violations that kept growing the more people looked at what she'd done. There were fines. There were legal fees. There were statements from the women on board, most of whom turned on her the second it became clear this was not, in fact, a funny lake outing. The HOA held an emergency meeting within days, and she got removed as president so fast you'd think they were trying to pretend they'd never supported her in the first place. Funny how that works. The same neighbors who used to nod along while she bullied people suddenly had very serious concerns about her judgment. A couple even came by my place afterward with awkward apologies, the kind where people want credit for realizing too late what they should have noticed early. I got my boat back with wine stains on the seats, glitter in places glitter should never be, and one broken cup holder, but no real damage. I spent the next afternoon cleaning it out in the sun, wiping down rails, tossing trash, scrubbing somebody's lipstick off the side panel. And I'll tell you something, I didn't mind one bit. Every smear I cleaned felt like the last page of the story. And when I finally took that boat out for the first quiet ride it was supposed to have got in the first place, the lake looked different. Same water, same docks, same breeze. But it felt lighter, quieter, like something rotten had finally been dragged out into the open where everybody had to smell it. Now I keep a much heavier lock on the dock gate, not because I'm scared, just because some lessons come expensive, and I prefer not to pay twice. Every time I ease that pontoon out onto the water now, coffee in hand, sun coming up over the lake, I think about how fast entitlement falls apart when it finally runs into a boundary it can't bully, charm, or shame into moving. And I'll admit it, there's a little satisfaction in knowing the last cruise Karen ever took in my boat ended with deputies waiting at the dock and her friends pretending they barely knew her. That's not revenge. Exactly. That's just consequences showing up in uniform. So let me ask you this. When somebody abuses a little bit of power and keeps getting away with it, what finally stops them? The law, public humiliation, or one person deciding they're done being polite? And have you ever dealt with somebody who thought rules were only for other people? Tell me what happened, and tell me honestly, do you think Karen got what she deserved or not enough?